98% of our exporters are small businesses. New trade partnerships with Europe and the Asia Pacific will help them create even more jobs. We need to work together on tools like bipartisan trade promotion authority to protect our workers, protect our environment, and open new markets to new goods stamped made in the USA. Listen, China and Europe aren't standing on the sidelines. And neither should we.
That was President Obama in his fifth State of the Union address. We just returned from Japan, Bob Herbert. There's a huge discussion about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Here, most people, if you ask them, they wouldn't even know what it is.
Well, one of the things that's a problem in this country is because the economic situation has been so stagnant for most people for so long, and because the government in Washington has been so dysfunctional, that Americans have really tuned out. And also, I don't think that the press has done a good job at all on trade agreements if you go all the way back to NAFTA in the 1990s. So people essentially don't even understand these agreements, but what they do understand is that they have not been helpful to the vast majority of workers over all these years. So.
Can I just make a comment on this?
Jeremy Scahill.
What Obama was doing there in his last major address that he gave, at the United Nations General Assembly, he laid out this sort of forceful defense of American empire, and even went so far as to say that the U.S. will use its military might to continue to secure energy resources. In this speech, it was a pretty forceful defense of a neoliberal economic agenda. And what Bob is saying about corporations resonates on a foreign policy level as well. What is widely being considered to be the most moving part of last night was when this U.S. Army Ranger was addressed in the crowd, and who was severely wounded and had done 10 tours. Think about that for a moment. 10 tours in these war zones. This young American spent his entire adult life in these combat zones, and the issue of how veterans are treated in this country is one thing. But at the end of the day, did he benefit from these wars? Does the average American benefit from the continuation of these wars? No. Who benefits? That's the most important question we all have to ask. It's corporations.
Exactly. War
corporations, the Halliburtons of the world, the Boeings. John Kerry, yesterday it was announced, is giving these awards for corporate excellence around the world. He's giving them to Citibank, to Apache, to Boeing, to Coca-Cola. And so you have this neoliberal economic agenda, which is sort of the hidden hand in many ways of the U.S. empire. And then you have this iron fist of U.S. militarism that is being sold to the American public and increasingly to the world as national security policy. And so, when I see that Army Ranger who's wounded like that, the first thing that just occurs to me is who has benefited from all of this? When corporations control our political process in this country through a legalized form of corruption that's called campaign finance, what does that say about the state of our democracy? In a way, there already has been a coup in this country, but it's been a silent coup. And it reminds me of that famous line from the great movie The Usual Suspects. At the end of it, Kevin Spacey's character says, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist." In many ways, a coup has happened. And the brilliance of it is that it's not sparking major uprisings because we've been pacified and taught to just accept this is how things work. We have two parties in this country. The minimum wage is going to be the minimum wage, and corporations are in control. And these wars are fought in our name, but without our consent.
And the flip side of who benefits is the suffering that is so tremendous out there among the warriors who have been sent over to fight these wars since late 2001. And so you just have hundreds of thousands of people who have men and women who have come back from the combat zones, who have terrible disabling injuries, who are going to have to be cared for. We have an obligation to care for them in many cases for the rest of their lives. We have to pay as a society to care for these folks. It's probably, Joe Stiglitz has estimated that now that these wars are probably going to toss cumulatively $4 trillion or more. None of this has been really explored clearly or properly explained to the American public.
Just a small side point on this. When we talk about the U.S. withdrawing from Iraq and Afghanistan, the conventional military, a story that very seldom gets attention is the connection between a paramilitarization militarization of law enforcement inside of the United States, an increasing use of what they call counterterrorism tactics on SWAT-style operations in the U.S., the military is donating a lot of its equipment to local police agencies and other so-called law enforcement agencies. And the communities that are most at risk here are communities of color and poor communities. Everything is about war. The war on drugs, the war on crime, and war requires some kind of a militarized response. And that's what we're seeing. This is deeply connected to the wars abroad, the wars at home as well.
This is actually going into our public schools, where you have that type of militarized behavior going on actually in public schools. That's how you get the school-to-prison pipeline that people are talking about.